Welcome to the channel. This is my bar that I'm currently working on, and you can see it's already pretty well set up, and part of that was the part of starting a channel being a little overwhelming. Not having the gear, not thinking I'm ready, not really thinking that I have something to share, but I want to bring you along on the journey of kind of finishing this space up. I'll walk you through what's already been done, and then as projects get finished, we'll move to other parts of the house. There are other parts of this house that are completed, and I can share those. There's little bits and parts that need to be finished, but for the most part, it's all coming together. With that in mind, we'll move over to first person view, and I'll show you around on what we're going to be working on today. All right, so projects we've completed so far. First things first was getting the back of this bar all set up. I will get some pictures of what this all looked like before. What we've done here is tongue and groove cedar, super easy to work with. It's all shot into what's basically a drywall and lightly framed structure behind. And what we're going to be working on today is getting trim installed, kind of cleaning up all these edges. So I have a little bit done, as you can see. And then I can kind of walk you through what's been done. So obviously tongue and groove, we've got all three sections done. We're already using the bar, so some of this space is it's a little hard to explain. Like, I wanted to get it done for Christmas. I got most of it done for Christmas, so it was passable. It worked. So things that are done, the shelves were rough cut 2-inch cedar, so that's all done. I did run it through a planer once and then cut the backside, so it's technically like S2S, but I wouldn't necessarily call it that. I thought this would be okay. I'm a little concerned about the liquor leaching through and into the wood itself, so I think we're going to poly these tops. That'll probably be another project for another day. I don't think I'm going to have enough time to do that. Other projects that were done was adding a pine top, and hopefully I don't blow out the camera. So that's our pine top, and adding these lights. And that should have been a relatively simple job. However, what I ended up doing was pulling the light out, or the power out of this, which means I had to pull power across the ceiling, and then over and down, and then into this light switch. This formerly, and I have pictures of it, was a telephone, and it's 2025, so telephones don't really work so well as far as walls go, so that's been swapped out. And then I put receptacles kind of up and in the I guess the floor joist space up here. There's a kitchen slash what would it be called, a laundry room on the other side of here. So there is space up in that ceiling right there to work, and then I also ran all the way across and added a receptacle back in this corner so we can plug in our lights, which gives us this wonderful light switch to work with. Some of the fun things about this house, and we'll all have to go on an electrical learning journey, is it's not really wired how normal people would wire a residential home. Whoever wired this house really loved metal boxes and putting as much wire in a metal box as humanly possible. I haven't found anything that's like crazy out of the ordinary, but there's definitely getting close on some fill issues. If you know NEC code, we're definitely close on how many conductors you can have in a box. This one up here was very close. There was a dimmer and 2 incandescent light bulbs, and I swapped this over to just an LED light bar. Much easier, a lot more light on the bar space, so it actually is a functional space to use. What else do we have done here? I also pulled electrical underneath, so now we have a plug for our ice maker, and also one for that cooler, and there will eventually be a cooler under here. Another project for another day is going to be actually framing out these coolers. So these beverage coolers, I want to lift them up a little bit and then frame this out and try to get it to match as well as I can. This is definitely not built here, so what I ended up doing is I'm basically skinning and fixing everything that you see, and we're using what was existing, and what is existing definitely came from an older home or other parts of Green Bay. And there's a lot of parts and pieces to this house that somebody took the time and removed components from homes that were getting torn down and brought them to this house. So it's a really unique house, and I'm trying to save as much of that as I can, just because, I mean, that's why we bought the house. We thought it was interesting. We thought it had a lot of really cool pieces. Also, we added whole home audio, another video that I will go over on how you can do this inexpensively. Most of what I bought is Facebook Marketplace stuff, and I'm borrowing an app. So this is absolutely something you can do really inexpensively. A fun part about this is we had 2 ducts here. So the house had 2 different heating and cooling systems, and I actually used where the duct was coming in on an air handler that I removed, and we used that for a speaker. Yeah, it's not great, but it is better than an extra air duct that we weren't using. So little things like that make a difference as you go. Oh, and I added a new faucet. The fun part about adding a new faucet was that our water does not fully shut off in our house. So for those who like to do plumbing live, that's what we ended up doing, which was kind of fun. Made a mess. And then there's also carpet. Carpet is carpet. Eventually we'll remove this, but it's a huge space, and I don't really have the money to put in, probably 2,000 square feet. Well, I don't really have the money to put in, 1,000 square feet of LVP today. So that'll be another project on another day. Maybe a product will come out that I like a little bit more than LVP. We'll find out. But as we go through the projects in this house, you'll find that I'm trying to use more woods and wood tones to go with the wood tones of this house. So what we need to work on, we need to get a piece on all of these tops right here. We've got little itty bitty spaces that are, let's see if I just knock out the light. It's even better than I thought. So there's little gaps that we're going to be closing up, and getting those gaps closed up is the first step, and then we'll have to get our measurements of what we need to cut here. The trim that I'm using is actually cutoffs from our backing boards here of the tongue and groove. What I did is I just ran it through the table saw about 3/4 of an inch, and it ended up making a nice little square stock that sits in the corner and tucks in a little bit below the shelves, which you'll be able to see. It'll tuck in really nice and tight against these shelves, and it should turn out pretty nice. So that will be our first step. We have to get over to the saw. I have the measurements for all these tops, so we'll get all these cut, get them in place, and then we can start cutting our trim, which is already cut as far as size-wise, but we'll have to cut it to length. So, all right, I'll catch you by the saw. All right, welcome to my shop space. It's a little bit messy, but it is better than it ever has been for those who've been in here. I'm slowly working, and that was where some of the I don't want to start a channel because my house is a mess kind of situation happened, and my shop's a mess. It's getting better. I'm adding some storage. I have to keep this space kind of open. I do ship for one of my small businesses, so most of my shipping stuff is over here. All my stock for that business, inventory, all of that kind of sits on this shelf. Project stuff sits back there, and then I'm slowly kind of fixing this. A lot of this was really well finished in here, but I couldn't have it be that way, and I had to remove all the ceiling that was in here and run all my intake and my venting out for my new furnace that we had to install. When we bought the house, the equipment was my age, which isn't a particularly good thing when you're purchasing a home, but we knew that coming in. Something to pay attention to when you're buying a home. Make sure your infrastructure is aged appropriately. Old equipment can run, but I spent, I think, the majority of our first winter rebuilding a 1988 train. Great piece of equipment, still works great. Heat exchanger is in great shape, but it wasn't meeting the needs of what this home needs, and things are slowly at it, or living space is slowly at it, so that equipment didn't really meet the needs. But anyway, we've been able to take this space. You can see we've got our pieces for our trim are all cut out, and then these are going to be our other pieces of cedar. Trying to do everything in cedar. The only thing that didn't end up being in cedar is the top. That's in pine because cedar that large was quite expensive, so it was just better off to just do that section in pine and then everything else in cedar. It's not really noticeable anyway. I do have some cutoffs left over too from that rough cut. and it was really nice. I'm really looking forward to trying to use some of this again. I'm gonna try to figure out a way to use some of this somewhere else. The figure is really cool. It turned out so nice. And I wish I would have started the channel because I think a lot of that would have been really neat to share. And that's my bad. I should have just, as soon as I knew I was going to be after it, we should have just started the channel. But anyway, let's get set up on the saw. We got to get our measurements onto the wood, get these cut, get them fit, and get them installed. I shut the basement door, and I've enraged a small lion. Poor thing. How will she ever survive? She can't go upstairs. She didn't want to look at us. Poor thing. All right, everything's cut and ready to go. No, that refrigerator does not work. I know that's pretty sad. I would use it for DVD storage of all things, which is kind of wild. But we are ready to go. Now, we could just shoot these in, and that wouldn't be a big deal. My only issue with that is this piece of pine is actually covering all of our wiring, and that is screwed up in there. And I'm going to also screw these on. So if something goes wrong with one of these lights, or any of these 9 lights, which, let's be honest, is a very good possibility, we want to be able to access that. You don't want to have things be so terrible that you never will fix it. So think about the next person. Even if the next person isn't you, you still want to be able to take this down and service it. And the way I'm handling this is it's a rough finish, so we can get away with screws. I'm going for like the 10-foot view instead of like the 6-inch view. Yeah, it would be nice if it didn't have, fasteners from the front. I could probably do some hidden fasteners, but then this will never get done. So it's better off we just kind of match what we did here. They're very little screws. From a distance, you can't even tell they're there. And that's the route we're going to be going. So these little guys, 1.5 inches is more than enough. We're not doing anything crazy here. And it should look pretty nice. So well, let's get these in place, and then we can get our measurements and get some trim pieces in here. Alright, that was almost painless. Definitely learned that my bit is getting tired. Probably should have used a new one of those. It did not like those particular screws. Now, like I said, 10 feet away, you're not going to see that. If I get you right up close, you will. The nice thing is, with it being rough cut, and with the edges still being rough, it looks great. I couldn't be happier. So next, the thing that does look great is our uneven cuts all the way across here. I could have done a better job, but the issue is these boards and how this was built is not perfectly square. So if I measured down here, it could be almost a 1/2 inch difference up here. So I was having a hard time getting all that to line up perfectly. And I think by adding these pieces of wood, that's going to help the most. The other thing we're going to want to be careful of is we don't want to pinch things very tight in here. We want to be able to pull these shelves out in the event they need to be cleaned, because we're going to poly the top, then we might have to wipe the top. Especially when you're dealing with something that's going to be a little bit more sticky, or anything that's going to potentially leach into the wood. I want to make this surface cleanable. The next person will appreciate it. The next person is me, so I will appreciate it. That's kind of what all of your projects should be focused on, is looks, but also the next person who has to deal with this. This will be completely removable. So if somebody does not like this, it's going to be a T10 and it's going to be a hammer. And we'll pull all this down really quick and move on to whatever the next thing you want is. This happened to be wallpaper before. 2 sets of wallpaper. So I'll make sure there's pictures of that. It's pretty crazy how much of a difference this makes. So, all right, back to measuring. I'm not gonna bore you guys with measuring. I'm gonna get these measured. We'll get back in the other room, get these things cut, and then get them installed. And as always, there's always a lesson to be learned. 1, should have checked my stock a little bit better. So 3 is going to have to be recut. You won't be able to see it on video, but it definitely did not track correctly on the table saw. So 3 will get recut, and 2 and 1 should be a lot closer than that. So I think my interpretation of my measurements might have been off a little bit. So these 2 are going to get remade. I am not going to force you to watch me do that. But always remember, measure once, cut twice. And there we go. Just like it never happened. So now we're just going to verify they all fit. And then once we verify they all fit, then we're going to tack them all in. And this project is going to be not completely done, but at least closer. So off to figuring out what I did wrong. All right, the Noisemaker 5000 is out. Sufficiently scared the cats, so we are on to putting all these in. Shockingly enough, everything's gonna fit. Weird when you use a tape measure and actually like read your measurements correctly. The nice thing is I gave myself a little bit of play space, so yeah, it's not gonna be perfectly tight on this shelf, but now I can pull that shelf out if I need to clean it. Once again, goes back to the take care of yourself in the future, because you don't want to be tearing out all your trim and everything you just did to pull a shelf out to clean it. So, all right, let's get all this shot in. Well, is it perfect? Nah, but I don't think it was ever meant to be perfect. It's one of those things where our hard edges, and we're all kind of beat up, are gone. Turned out pretty nice in my opinion. I'll let you all be the judge of that. What's next for this project? Well, I can tell you, as somebody who took 7 years to put trim on in my last house after I remodeled the bathroom, I'm pretty happy with getting trim up, or, you know, whatever we want to call this, edging. I don't know if I'd call it trim, but I definitely cleaned it up nice. The next big step, I think, is going to be polying these tops before they get damaged. My only fear about polying these tops is that then I'm going to look at this rough cut and I go, man, I bet that would look really nice polyed too. So we're going to try not to do that to ourselves and end up with running this through the thickness planer and then having to poly everything and then poly in the bottom. The next thing you know, this will end up being a beautiful piece of wood, don't get me wrong, but it will be a lot of work to get that all done. I think we're just going to poly the top. We're going to be careful not to get poly dripping down into our rough cuts here, and that should turn out pretty nice. Next would be getting this actually trimmed out instead of having these black voids all the way around. Probably cutting the carpet out too. There's no reason to have carpet underneath the refrigerator. It is what it is. It had to happen. And then I think after that, we're probably going to have to find a refrigerator for under here. it's already wired up and ready for it. So we'll have to take this out and then get that all trimmed out so that it matches, which is going to be a lot of fun doing color matching to whatever this is. I've had a hard time color matching to the woodwork in this house. It's just all over the place. And then we've got hardwood flooring coming for upstairs, which means we got a huge project for that, which is going to take quite a bit of time, to be honest, going back to a beer now. So we've got our main living room, and then that will require picking up a piano, which I haven't really put that one together yet. So the inconvenient thing, don't buy a piano before the room is finished. Life lesson learned. Also on top of that, we also learned today, measure twice, cut once, measure once, cut twice, make sure your table saw is lubricated and that your track actually is tracking correctly. Important things. All right, well, we'll catch you in the next one. I have a beer to finish and a little bit of editing to do. So thanks for watching. Catch you in the next one.